Right, I think we're all here. So, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had a few technical issues there, but I think that we're all okay now. So, welcome to this Lunch and Learn, real cyber attack vectors and how to fight back. We're very lucky to have Al Surratt and Gary Euler from Maintegrity. 5 a.m. for them. So thank you very much for doing that. Um, Before I hand over to them, just a couple of things. Please remember to do your feedback. This session is 6L. Let me just check, 6L. Um, Please make sure you do this, as it's really important for us to know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we can improve, or if you think everything is absolutely wonderful, that would be great. Um, I think Al and Gary are quite happy for you to unmute and ask questions and make this a very interactive session, but they will tell you that. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Al and Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ange. I'd like to welcome everybody on their lunch hour today. It was a little earlier for us to get started this morning, but I think we have some very interesting technology to go through. So because this is a lunch and learn, we're going to be very specific about what the product does and the problems that it fixes. So we've had a small technical problem, so I'm going to have to get my colleague Gary to click through the slides for us. So if you'd go one in, that's great, Gary. Thanks. So our discussion today is all about how to fight back against cyber attackers. And one of the things that we went over in considerable detail in our session yesterday was the fallacy that mainframes are very secure environments. In fact, there are very few attacks against mainframes, but they are often the victim of attacks from open systems or insiders in a lot of ways that you don't traditionally think about. So security remains a key element to resolve in mainframe computers, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But first of all, I'd like to thank my colleague Gary Euler for joining us this morning. Gary and I each have 40 years of experience in IT and most of it in mainframe and enterprise systems. So hopefully the background that we're going to give you this morning will be useful. So thanks very much. Gary, if you'd go to the next slide. That little slide was me being caught in a very strong current riding across the Red Deer River at flood stage. And I often think that that's reflective of right where we are in the mainframe security environment. Things are really moving quickly all around us, and we have to really work to keep up with that. But Gary, you might as well bring up all these points. You'll have to click on each one of them, it looks like. Yeah.
Do you know how many clicks I got to do?
Oh, a couple more. It'll fill up the page. We're good. We don't, a note from Brett, I just saw, we're not seeing your screen. Is everybody else seeing Gary's screen?
I'm seeing it. Yeah, I'm seeing it. I don't know, Brett, are you still not seeing it? You can unmute. We see the slides, but not riding across the river.
It was just actually in the little picture above that, Brett. So anyway, long story.
There he is.
Yeah, there. That's the current that we're in. So anyway, if you carry on with that next screen, Gary, we'll get right into it. So okay, so the first thing we're really going to talk about is just a very quick recap on what we did yesterday. But I think the presentation yesterday was very interesting because we were able to use AI very effectively to do lots of research over the web to see where mainframe attacks, and more importantly, where mainframes had been the victim of an attack that took place elsewhere, but the data and the damage occurred on mainframe records or to mainframe records. So we're going to go through that. We're going to spend a little time at the end on LoRa and an overall approach to this, but we're really going to focus this morning on technology that exists in Maintegrity FIM Plus and Maintegrity cybersecurity framework that allows you to react in a much more responsible manner than has been available before. So Gary, if you'd move on, that'd be great. First of all, are mainframes really at risk? Well, they're not really seemingly at great risk of direct attack. In the well-known cases of Nordea Bank in Sweden, Barclays in Britain, at Standard Bank in South Africa, these are really insider attacks, or in the very rare case, an external attacker who breaks through. However, there's a different metric and a different process. So click again for me, Gary. What we find is that mainframes are often the victim of an attack elsewhere in the web. And I have plenty of examples of this sort of thing. But the world's biggest breaches typically came from data that was stored on the mainframe. And that's where the consequence comes to lie. So for the famous case of the Office of Personnel Management, where 22 million high security personnel records were breached by reportedly the Chinese, that all took place because of an attack on open systems. Then there was lateral movement from that open systems environment because they're in a place where they're now connected to the mainframe. It has the capability to log on to the mainframe. That gives access to people that are now inside your mainframe. Then they can start looking around. If there's no tracing, if there's no tracking internally within the mainframe, that is not typical in a z/OS environment, if those tools that frankly haven't really been available before, if there are no tools to track that, then you have the potential for one of these great big breaches to take place with mainframe data as the target. Another famous one was the Anthem breach, the largest HIPAA fine. HIPAA is a US law, and it requires organizations that are handling health insurance or health information, in fact, to be more vigilant even than banks and insurance companies. But the law exists, and the largest single fine was $16 million against a company called Anthem Inc., and it was some of the old Blue Crosses that had been amalgamated. But the point here is that everybody talks about this as a fine, $16 million. But the real cost, as I calculated, we'll get there in a minute, is more like $1 billion. That's 78 million records in that breach came off the mainframe. They didn't come off some open systems environment that was the original attack point. The perpetrators got inside the mainframe. They had plenty of time. The attack took months in order to transpire. And it's one of the ones I'll just spend a wee bit of time on to kind of set the stage. So although senior management often thinks mainframes are secure, they really have the problem that they are victims. So where do these attacks that are really famous, where did they take place? They take place on the mainframe, revealing mainframe information, impacting mainframe functions. A really good example of that is the one that is still ongoing at United Health. Because of their operation at the center of billing in the United States, at one point, 50% of drugstore payments, 50% of physician payments, many hospital payments could not be processed. To get back to the point where they could be, in a very rudimentary sense, processed at all, took 5 days. Then, sorry, did somebody ask for a clarification? HIPAA is AA. Yes. And I think it's right there. Oh, I misspelled it once in the line and spelled it correctly the other place. Anyway, the point is, it is HIPAA. That's what the act is called. Unable, okay, so they were unable to process 50, and it really, the healthcare system almost shut down in the US because things couldn't be paid. But the response so far is $593 million in cost. And that's because the mainframe was unavailable. United Health has a large mainframe, and it is very much associated with those billings. So those are important things to be able to handle. Gary, if you'd go to the next slide. Okay, so a conventional security has never really focused on things that come in from an internal and trusted source, like a connected open systems environment. They're all set up to let the good guys in and do their work, and keep the bad guys out. And you know, traditionally that's been fairly straightforward to do. But bad guys get more resourceful. Click again for me, Gar. And they now steal credentials. You've heard about all kinds of phishing campaigns and that sort of stuff. And certainly MFA helps if you have it implemented, but there's still ways to get access. And these hackers become more and more responsive to getting into these environments. So if you click for me again, but things that where it really matters, where people are already inside, where they already have an MFA fob. People that go rogue in your environment, they typically have an addiction problem of some sort, or they have a gambling problem where they fall into financial concerns or those kinds of things. So insiders are already inside. They know what to attack, and they have the access to do that. So they need to be watched. And then, of course, there are the cases of people just doing their work and making a small mistake, making an update to the wrong system, making it at the wrong time, changes in error. So our product suite focuses specifically on those kind of issues. So click again for me. We do integrity monitoring, and we identify those problems when they occur. So click again for me, Gary. As we move forward, though, mainframes are now connected, and they are connected in a very broad sense. So if they're not connected to everything yet, they really will be connected to everything. So this becomes a bigger and bigger problem. So click again for me, Gary. These attacks that take place on Windows, you have an old copy of this presentation.
I apologize. I found it. Anyway, I thought it was correct, but anyway, how bad is it?
We'll get through it.
Okay.
These attacks because of a technical problem, we had to go to our backup, and luckily we had one.
And it's 5 in the morning in Canada, and so sometimes things just don't work the same way at 5 in the morning.
So mainframes are being more connected all the time, and they'll eventually be connected to almost everything. But the attack point is often on these open systems. And since they're now connected, now they're insiders within the mainframe. So click again for me. The big damage is through lateral movement. So we have these hackers on the outside. They get a foothold, as they did in the very recent ICBC attack, the Industrial Commercial Bank of China. And in that attack, they attacked a VPN. So they really had two opportunities. They could have gone and attacked the host, which was ICBC, or they could have attacked the trading on US treasuries by going in the other direction to attack another mainframe that was attached to the same VPN, because there's two ends to a virtual private network, of course. And that gives them access into the mainframe. So when they get into the mainframe, what are the typical attacks that they use? Well, everybody's heard of ransomware, and everybody knows about encryption. Encryption is really nice if I'm a hacker, and I'm in the business of being a hacker, because it's easily reversible. So I can get in there, I can encrypt something really valuable, and then I can sell a key back to the victim organization, and I can give them the key and move on, and never really worry about being tracked down too much, because in the long run, I got my ransom, but the big damage of a huge breach has been avoided. So I pay them a few $1 million for an encryption key. In the case of MGM, they were really forced to make a decision, and they decided that they weren't paying the encryption. So they were out for days. The recent CBS article said just the business impact was over $100 million. But the total cost of rebuilding their distributed servers and that sort of thing, and the information that is now becoming available on the web, is incalculable, but will easily exceed $1 billion. So when the mainframe is a victim, this is extremely expensive. However, I don't think there's a senior manager left alive that understands how big a problem this is. The other key problem is, of course, data exfiltration. I posted on the web, and then it's big time if you click for me again, Gary. But new sources of damage are coming in all the time. So one of the big discussions on the mainframe is how we need to be able to improve the rollout and speed of building systems on the mainframe. And that means we're bringing open source right into the mainframe. Well, the reason that open systems get attacked effectively so often is that open source, which they're all based on, it's like a roadmap of how to attack me, because I can read the source that is there, and I can find a new way to plug myself in with a new exploit if I'm an attacker. So this problem is real. Gary, if you would click again for me. Yes, this is really an old version. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to you, Gary, because you're going to do this slide.
Okay. Any questions there so far? You guys are all able to unmute if you want to ask any questions. We were hoping this would be a bit more interactive, but it's up to you guys. I can start drawing on if you don't have any questions. No? Okay. So suppose somebody does get into your mainframe, what are they going to do? And you know, we do talk to a lot of the pen testers that are well known in the industry all the time, and this is kind of what they tell us that they do. The first step, called reconnaissance or something, they're going to go and try and footprint your system and find out where your areas of vulnerability are. After they determine that, it could be your backups they'll compromise. They could install some time bombs so that if they do encrypt a database and then you restore it, the time bomb may kind of just go back and redo the encryption if you haven't paid the ransom. And they usually put in all kinds of backdoors and stuff so they can get back into the system even if you do catch them. So that's kind of things they do. Now, if you look at ransomware, the volume, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, the volume of attacks just seems to be going up and up. And the numbers, like in 2021, it was like 145% increase in the volume of ransomware attacks worldwide. And certainly there are regimes on the planet where they don't really prosecute any of the ransomware players, kind of thing. So is there any questions there?
Yeah, we often think that ransomware is now a business, and this is very profitable in some areas. In fact, it's a key component of the GDP in many of these darker regimes in the world, particularly North Korea and Russia. But it's important that we understand before going any further, this is a real risk, and this is a real risk to your mainframe. So back to you, Gary. These are key protections that you need to put in place.
Okay, so the next bunch of slides is about our product specifically, FIM Plus. And so we started building FIM Plus in, I don't know if I told you it was 2017. I'm in the range. It might be earlier than that even. And you know, it's interesting. We didn't really build it for ransomware. We built it because the credit card industry, the data security standard for the payment card industry required file integrity monitoring, and we knew there wasn't any file integrity monitoring on the mainframe. So this is really where the product started. And so what we do with FIM Plus in the file integrity monitoring component is we read files, we scan them, and we create a hash key from both the metadata and the contents of the file, and we store that key in a database. We also log that this key has been created, and we can propagate that to your favorite SIEM product. And as time goes on, we recreate the keys, we compare them to the ones in the vault, and as long as nothing's changed, everything's okay. When something's changed, when we detect that there has been a change, we generate an event, and that event causes an alert, and we send an email or a text message to whoever the responsible person is on your team. And within that email or text, there'll be a link to our browser. And if you click on the browser link, we'll start bringing in some forensic information for you to look at. First of all, because we know the interval that the file was good, so we know when the last scan was good and we know when it was changed, we know the interval when the attack occurred. But we also go out to SMF and we'll pull in the SMF records pertaining to the change, and that'll give you who did the change, the user ID that made the change, and the exact time the change was made. The product also has the ability to go out to ServiceNow or Helix ITSM, which I think used to be Remedy, and check and see if there is a change control record that would pertain to the change, so that you can actually decide whether this was actually a legitimate change or it was something that was outside change control. For text-based files, there's an inline compare facility, and that'll take the baseline source and compare it to the change source, and it'll show you the differences. You know, in the change one, it'll be highlighted in red, and it'll be green in the one that's the original. We also have the ability to open a trouble ticket that in your trouble ticket system to say that this has occurred. So that's really kind of the basic parts of file integrity monitoring that we've had for quite a long time now. This is quite an old one. You're right, Al. Also in the product, we we have a thing we call a recovery assistant. And what does that do? So when we detected a file's changed, we thought, well, geez, we could probably easily have templates for various recovery facilities, tailor those with the FIM Plus insight, which is into what has actually changed, and then build JCL that you could then submit and recover all those files. And indeed, that's what we did. Today, we provide templates for HSM, DFDSS, FDR, gold copy if you want to use gold copies. And recently, we've just finished testing. Rocket has a product they call Data Recovery, and right now it's for ZDP for Dell systems. But what that product does is it allows you, if you have immutable backups, you can restore single files from immutable backup instead of a whole volume. And we've just finished, we've like in the last couple of weeks completed our testing on that product. The other thing that is really quite interesting from a recovery point of view is because it's a file integrity monitoring product, when you recover the files, we can actually go and scan the files and compare the keys that were created from their just recovered files to the ones in the vault. And if they match, you know that what you've restored is exactly what used to be there before the change occurred. So that's kind of our recovery system.
So this is a very key. So Gary did mention a couple things that are really key here. One of them is the recovery from immutable backups. So there are very few products that can look inside an immutable backup and actually tell you whether they're reliable, which version of an immutable backup you should recover from, and really the notion that the immutables are there gives you a bit of a false sense of security in terms of recovery. So immutable backups are very good at backup. They're very quick. They're a great way to have a 15-minute old copy to recover from, but which of course reduces the amount of recovery time because you only have to recover 15 minutes worth of forward recovery. But it's at the volume level at very best, and it's hard. They're hard to see inside. So the combination with the Rocket Data Recovery tool is really important, and it allows us to go in and just get the data set that you want and bring that back. So it's a huge speed increase because we know what the available immutables are, and we know how to pull that data back now with the Rocket code. The other thing that is really important here is on the recovery side, with Dora, we're going to find out that a couple of hours is all you have. So you have to automate that process. You need to automate the process so that it's not subject to human failure when something goes wrong. That all comes from FIM Plus and really our new focus on the entire cybersecurity framework that comes with FIM Plus. So very important that these things can be put together and use conventional and immutable backups. But you have to get the malware out of your system before you go on the air. So just like Gary said, the FIM Plus file verification that takes place at the end of the process will tell you that the compromised components have been recovered and that you are now back in your trusted state. So I think it's over to me at this point, right, Gary?
No, I think it's still me.
No,
Isn't it?
you carry on. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so in August of last year, we announced our early warning feature, and what this product does is it intercepts mass encryption events, it intercepts mass delete events, it does some access detection, and it does reconnaissance detection on critical data sets. So, what we're trying to do here is start giving you real capability to intercept an attack. And also with the features, not only do we intercept them, but we give you the ability to suspend those tasks when they're in flight. And what that does is it gives you the ability to stop something that's exceeded like for instance, a threshold for encryption. The job just suspends. It gives you time to go in and do an investigation and determine whether that job is in fact malicious or it's benign. And then if it turns out it's benign, you can resume that job from exactly where you suspended its operation. So it's quite an interesting feature set, we think. And the recon and the data set access detection, that starts giving you the ability to detect when somebody's starting to try to footprint your system and see where your vulnerabilities are and that kind of thing. Now, if you've been following us since 2017, you know that we never do really sit around for too long doing nothing, and our early warning feature is the same. We do have a new version of the product coming out. We're calling it version 3, and it's probably going to be available in June. Certainly, it's all written now and being tested. And what we're doing is we're expanding what we started last August, and we're starting to put in features to do things that these are things that some of these penetration testers have told us are kind of dangerous, and they're ZOS commands that you can go to determine where things are and that kind of thing. And it's also you doing things like LD commands to see what who has access to protected resources and that kind of thing, so people can start to determine vulnerabilities. Some of these things are getting kind of technically deep and that kind of stuff. So privilege escalation, impersonating a user ID, so you can have our technical guys tell us it takes 7 instructions to go from one user ID to another. So it's not that difficult to do technically, but we can start to detect those kinds of things and that kind of stuff. So I don't want to go into this too much. Some of these things we don't really want to talk about too much without an NDA in place, and it's just because we don't want to give the bad guys hints about what we're doing. And certainly that's true with the countermeasures on certain exploits. We don't want to talk about that too much and stuff. So if you do want to learn more about that, talk to us, and we'll get an NDA in place and we'll start talking about it some more.
Yeah, I think the really important thing is that there are all sorts of things on the mainframe that go undetected. So, authorization, it gives you a level of separation between problem state and the keys to the kingdom, the ability to look into any address space to do anything under control. There's no good way to observe who is going to authorized state in ZOS today. As a result of that, we had to fill that gap. That's a technical gap that's existed since the very beginning of System 360. Authorized environments are not verified on any sort of regular basis. FIM Plus now will do that for you. So if somebody comes in problem state and in some manner manages to get authorization, which is highly dangerous, we'll detect that in a few seconds. We'll alert you to the problem with a real-time alert. You can react to that situation in real time. You can use countermeasures that we have built in, perhaps, to reverse that before the attack takes place. But you need to think hard about both being able to recover, but because these time windows are so tight, and because recovery is a million possible scenarios that nobody can possibly plug all of them with all of the recovery capability that we have today, because of that, you need to protect your system like never before. Your ZOS system is probably connected to all kinds of open systems environments and has new capability. Yeah, go right here, Gary.
Sorry, I pushed the button too many times.
Yes, you did. So the importance of this is that you cannot survive on recovery alone. You just can't get back in the amount of available time. The United Healthcare situation shows that in spades. 5 days to get their key deliverables back being processed in a normal manner. So when you really look in your own heart of hearts at your own environment, you know, can you get back in 2 days? I don't think so. Can you get back in 2 hours? I should say. I really don't think anybody here can look at themselves and say, oh, we're going to have a problem and we're going to be back on the air in 2 hours. No, sir. Anyway, I'll very quickly go through one singular example, but this spans the entire solution. So encryption today runs as a simple problem state attack. Whatever I have access to, I can encrypt. Most of the time, encryption is defensive. So we're trying to encrypt data that might get out into the wild, that might be exfiltrated, that might be stolen in some manner and used in a breach event. So what we need to do is be absolutely certain that we allow all of the desirable encryptions to take place exactly as they take place today, but we determine the malicious ones. So we do that automatically with FIM Plus because we have a whitelist of all the encryptions that are supposed to run, and we can intercept very early in a process and decide whether that was correct or not. Because encryption runs so fast on these mainframes, every second counts. Multiple databases can be attacked. Every single item that the rogue ID has access to be encrypted can be encrypted in minutes. Millions of records could be unusable. And there's just no way to detect it with current tools. So next slide, Gary. So what did we do? Oh, 2 clicks. We invented a way to detect encryption when it starts in the first second of operation. That way, we can intercept, we can say, is it on our whitelist? If it's on our whitelist that we built automatically for you, then we just say, go ahead. That's fine. Okay, 2 more clicks, Gary. But since we have control at this point, if it's not on our approved list, we can suspend that task. That one task. Everything else runs like normal. We suspend the one task and we send a real-time alert to the support group. And the support group then has the luxury of time. Because the damage has been stopped, it's suspended, I can take the right amount of time, investigate the problem, continue with all the other operations going on in the mainframe, make my decision as to what I want to do. So 2 more clicks here. So when I'm presented in our GUI interface, I'm presented with 2 boxes. One is the red box, which says, oh, I actually, since FIM told me who the responsible ID was for, and since I know who to call, I can check out whether that was some new encryption process that applications put in, or whether that was something that we don't know about at all. So I only have to decide then to click the resume button to say, oh yeah, I talked to Harry in applications and we need to get this done. Or the other option, 2 more clicks, Gary, is I can click the cancel button and it'll create a trouble ticket automatically for you. It will put you into the recovery process, but that encryption job is canceled and out of your system, so it cannot do more damage. So the amount of damage that can be prevented by this is orders of magnitude, and that damage is prevented in the mainframe world. So those kinds of things apply to all sorts of the other triggers that Gary quickly went over. So Gary, back to you.
So we're going to just demonstrate a little bit of this, and it's a CAN demo. I didn't actually realize that GSE ran Zoom. We probably could have done it live. I would have had an IPL system earlier this morning, and it's 5:35 or something here, and I probably would have had to get up real early to do that, and I just so you're getting a CAN one. But what we're going to do is we're going to submit a batch job, and it runs encryption instructions. Our FIM Plus system is set up to intercept these jobs if they exceed a certain number of encryption instructions, and this job will exceed the threshold. And I'll show you what it looks like when we suspend the batch job and that kind of thing. I'll also show you what the email notification looks like, or at least at what one kind of email notification looks like. We do have a number of email templates that we ship with the product, and this is just one of them. And then we'll also, Al was just talking about terminating or resuming the job in the browser. I'll show you what that looks like in real time. And now, I think if I press this, nope, if I press this,
So I can't hear any audio there.
I can't hear any audio either, because when I shared screen, I didn't say do the audio, but that's
Share the audio.
okay. I'll just talk to it. So I just submitted this batch job. This batch job runs encryption instructions. It runs 8,000 encryption instructions. And what we're going to do now is this is our FIM Plus browser, and I'm just refreshing the browser, and there's the job. It ran on our mainframe and it got suspended. Now I'm going to go over here and click on this eyeball over here, and that gives me more detail about the job. You can see the account of the number of encryption instructions ran is 4,000. This system is set up, the threshold is 2,000 instructions, and it checks that every 2 seconds. You can change those parameters to do whatever you want. Now I'm going to my email just to show you what the email notification looks like. Here it is. This is the email notification that was automatically generated by FIM Plus. That's my user ID. That's the job name. And if you click that link, it'll put you right back to where we are here. And from this screen, you can see there's a cancel job. What I'm doing now is I'm going to go to SDSF and show you what this job looks like from an SDSF point of view. There's the job. If I PF11 a couple of times, you can see it's in a quiesced state. I just wanted to show you that quickly. Okay, now I'm going to go back to, I think, to the browser, if I remember right. Yes, I am. And you can see over here, there's a cancel job and a resume job button. I'm just going to go ahead and probably cancel this job. And that's what I did. And now the job's canceled, and all the damage that that job could have been doing is done and it's finished. So what you just saw there is an encryption job running. We detected it, we suspended it, we did an investigation, we determined we didn't want it to run, and we canceled it. So that's what we did.
So the importance of that is that it takes the human response time out of this sort of activity. So there's a relatively small number of clicks that is required for the support organization to react to that. So that demo actually shows we do a little bit of screen changing in order to show you exactly what is happening in the mainframe at the time, but it also proceeds quickly enough and is directed in the user interface so that for the support team, they really are presented with, here's the problem, investigate it, and then make a decision, cancel it or resume it. So it takes a few seconds to react. In a normal a z/OS environment without FIM Plus in place, that would take an hour or more. And by that time, you won't have to worry about reacting, because in an hour, they'll have encrypted everything that's of value on that system that they can get a hold of, and something really big is going to have come crashing down. So your first indication that there's a problem is not you get an alert and you can react. It's the DB2 fails and you don't have a clue where to start. Back to you, Gary.
I think this is your slide now.
Oh, okay. So, you
Isn't
know,
it?
Gary started in with the common attack vectors that ransomers use. So FIM Plus itself, because it can detect changes that are not coming through your production deployment environment, it can detect where the backdoors are. It can detect where the time bombs are. It can protect your conventional backups. The encryption that takes place against databases can be detected in the early stages and prevent it from proceeding. And in many cases, the preceding activities to either a data exfiltration or an encryption will have been identified in the indicators of compromise that FIM Plus continuously monitors. So it is very simple to say we've avoided a ransomware attack here. So Gary, if you click one more time. Before we get into Dora, I think there was a question that I didn't see came up on the screen. Was there one, Gary? Did you happen to notice one? Okay, I'll continue on.
Sorry, Al,
Okay.
there is a question. What happens if the invasion happens in night hours when no support people are available?
So suspension can wait until somebody who's authorized can come in and do that. So there's a real-time alert that goes out, and it goes out both by email and by text. So if nobody is available, that encryption would be held. And when somebody comes back in to look at that, then they would just release it and it could proceed as normal. But typically by that point, it's not on our approved list. This is a high risk activity to have going on while nobody is looking at it. So it's better to hold that than it is to let it proceed and hope for the best. So yes, it could wait for some period of time for somebody to respond to that. But reinforcement alerts are also built into the system. So you don't get one alert for this necessarily. You might get multiple for high risk activities, and that's customer definable.
Yeah, and so for instance, I showed you in the demo there that we could send an email to an individual person, but there's nothing to stop you from putting a message into whatever software system your NOC. I'm assuming you're going to have a NOC of some kind, and it will be monitored 24/7. So somebody can get aware of this pretty easily. But the beauty of doing a suspension is that even if it waits until the next morning, it's not, that job is not doing any more damage to your system. It's in a quiet state. So if it was malicious, you stopped it at the detection point. So that's a very useful thing.
So I'm going to very quickly go over Dora. We're kind of at the end of our hour. So it's very key that Dora is changing the playing field. And really the issues here are potential criminal penalties, major fines, and really a focus on you have to be testing. So you have to have pen testing done. You have to go through your recovery plans. Well, good luck with a lot of the existing tools. You're not going to make your 2-hour recovery window. I can pretty much tell you that. But let's go on to the next slide, 2 down, Gary. If that's in this presentation, of course. Can you click
I'm
forward
pushing the
for me?
button. I'm pushing the button and nothing's happening. Oh, wait a second.
Okay, good.
There it is.
Okay.
I went down a couple, I think.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's fine. Okay. So what the point is, can you click one more time for me? There. Okay. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, there are a bunch of blue boxes. Let me talk about identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. DORA depends in many respects on best practices, and they are identified typically in the NIST cybersecurity framework environment. NIST is US legislation, but it's very detailed and it has very good requirements. But the main pillars are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. They are shared with DORA. DORA has the same ones. So all of these things need to be implemented, and most are not implemented effectively in the mainframe environment today. So at the bottom of the screen, you see all kinds of 5 blue boxes about how FIM Plus and other vendor products respond to various elements within this. So FIM Plus, more importantly now, rolled up into a cybersecurity framework, will allow the technical pieces to be fixed, the technical gaps, the software gaps in ZOS, and the reactions and the recovery capabilities that are all built in. That brings all of that capability to the mainframe. But the other thing that the Maintegrity cyber security framework does for you is it gives you an end-to-end multi-vendor GUI-based solution. So the GUI comes from us, the process comes from Maintegrity, the ability to start with identify and go all the way through to recovery comes from Maintegrity, but you can plug in the other tools that you have in your environment, whether they come from IBM, BMC, ServiceNow, or any of the other tools like Rocket or other environments that you might have active. And this end-to-end multi-vendor GUI environment not only provides alerts to ZOS responders, it can interact in a two-way communication with things like your network operations center or your security operations center, depending on how you're set up. So there should be a way to integrate throughout the process. And we build that in as part of our consulting process when we come to help you build your overall security environment. So one more click and I'm going to wrap up, Gary, and we'll move on because we're a little past our time. But these are the kinds of things that the cybersecurity framework that Maintegrity puts in place. These are what it will do for you. So you get indicators of compromise at a much earlier time, so you can prevent attacks from taking place. The best recovery is no recovery at all because I prevented the attack. But if something gets started, we can freeze the bad actors at the instant they get started, or in fact, again before, because there are a number of things like getting authorization that aren't detected today that we'll see, and we'll freeze that user ID, do the suspensions that are necessary, protect your environment in a rigorous way that you can't do today. But in that process, we're also going to help you with conventional restores, with surgical restore of your system environment to its trusted state. Verify that, as Gary said, but work with other tools from other vendors like ServiceNow, Splunk, Rocket. You see them all on the bottom of the screen. This is an overall solution. You need to ensure that management understands that better security will have real value in the mainframe environment, because at the end of the day, we do not want it to be a victim. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for sticking around. We went over a little bit. I hope that's not a problem for any of you. And sorry about it being a little rough. We had a few technical difficulties there.
That was great. Thank you very much, Al and Gary. A really interesting presentation. I don't think we have any questions. I'll just ask, has anyone got any questions? You can unmute yourselves. Oh, no, just a thank you. I have just put something into the chat about the feedback. I gave you the wrong session ID earlier. It is 6I, not 6L. Please remember to submit it. And I've put something in the chat there. There's 3 different ways of doing this. And if you need your registration number, that can be found at My GSC, My Details and Registration.
Gary, if you click one more time, I think you'll get the closing slide there
Okay.
on a couple of times, I guess. There
it is. Yeah, wonderful. And just to remind everyone, these sessions are all recorded, so we'll all be able to have a look back through these, which is great. So no questions. So thank you both very much for joining at such an ungodly time. 5 AM. Yeah, very dedicated, and thank you for your support of GSC UK. That's fantastic. And everyone enjoy the rest of the conference. So thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much, Hans.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.